This is a full story. Puppy wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. Rockey drove to pick me up. A man who is always aloof and abstinent had actually allowed his new secretary to sit in the passenger seat. I knew this marriage might not last. That day, Rockey drove to pick me up. When he opened the passenger door, I was momentarily stunned. A young and beautiful girl was sitting in the passenger seat, smiling sweetly at me. "Hello, Mrs." The girl greeted me politely, but she had no intention of moving. I squinted slightly and turned my gaze to Rockey. Rockey was looking down, taking a call, and didn't notice the undercurrent of tension. We were supposed to go to an auction together today. I had been looking forward to this date with him and had dressed up deliberately, only to find someone else sitting in the passenger seat. "Hello, sister-in-law. My name is Serena, Rockey's new assistant." The girl smiled warmly, with two shallow dimples that were particularly sweet. "I heard you're going to a private auction tonight, and I asked Rockey to take me along to see the world. Don't worry, I won't disturb you." My heart sank instantly. I knew this cold and perfect man too well. He had always been distant. He would not easily allow others to intrude. We were brought together through an arranged marriage. After many considerations, we chose each other. Others joked that I would be a living widow. But after confirming our relationship, Rockey would gently hug me with warm eyes. In moments of passion, his eyes would even turn slightly red. He said, "You are my wife, we are one, and you are naturally different from others." Today, it seemed like something had changed. But I am not a passive wallflower. I am Haley, who never bothers to watch other people's faces when I am angry. "Get out," I said coldly, showing no mercy. The girl was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect that I would be so blunt on our first meeting. Perhaps my tone was too harsh. Serena was momentarily at a loss. Sorry, Haley." The girl's voice had a crying tone as she awkwardly moved to the back seat. Rockey had just finished his call and looked over at us. He realized I was upset. His face showed helplessness and indulgence. The man leaned over and fastened my seatbelt. Noticing the seat had been adjusted, I impatiently readjusted it myself. The commotion made me extremely angry. Why on earth does someone dare to adjust my passenger seat? The atmosphere in the car grew tense, and the girl was scared into silence. Rockey frowned slightly and calmly suggested, "If you're in a bad mood today, we can go home." In the rearview mirror, the woman was silently crying. I was extremely frustrated. "Serena, right? I'm not in the mood to go anymore. You can take a cab back. Rockey and I are going home." The girl's face turned pale as she looked weakly at Rockey. The man had no intention of rescuing her. The girl got out of the car, disheartened. Rockey would never let me lose face in front of others. He always knew how to control his emotions, so he suggested we go home. If there was an issue, we would resolve it at home. This was our unspoken understanding over the years. "Serena is just a college student who just entered the workforce. Why are you making such a fuss about her?" Rockey hugged me close. "This is the first time." Rockey looked confused. "What? For so many years, this is the first time you've let another woman sit in your passenger seat?" The man didn't expect that this was what I cared about. Everyone in the circle knew how outstanding Rockey was. Many women liked him, countless in number. But he kept himself clean. Though surrounded by enchanting flowers, he remained untouched. Rockey smiled faintly and ruffled my disheveled hair. "You actually got jealous this time." The man bent down to kiss me, his nose brushing against my cheek. "She is just my subordinate, nothing more. I won't have any other relationship with her." Rockey held my face and looked into my eyes. He spoke softly, giving me his promise. A woman's sixth sense is always quite accurate. Even though I had only met Serena once, my intuition told me that the girl must have other feelings for Rockey. I thought a stern first impression would be enough. But to my surprise, the necklace that was supposed to be for me at the auction was, the next day, hanging around the girl's neck. Alice, Rockey's chief assistant, sent me a photo and a moment screenshot. In the photo, the crescent moon diamond necklace was draped around Serena's pale neck, making her look even more charming and delicate. The girl's eyes were red and swollen, but she wore a smile. She must have cried all the way home last night. She received a gift from someone. The screenshot was of a moment posted by Serena. "The president says that even if a girl is wronged, she must remain strong. Wipe away the tears, as ordered, my president," with several cute, fist-pumping emojis, and a picture of the necklace in its box. At that moment, my blood nearly froze. Though it was hard to admit, I had to acknowledge that I was deeply provoked and almost lost my composure. It felt terrible, like a cherished white handkerchief stained with mosquito blood. This feeling was strange to me. I even wanted to disregard the facts and drive a 180 miles per hour yellow Ferrari, slapping that woman in person. But looking at my own hands, I realized it was beneath me to care about a low-quality green tea. I called the Hermes sales representative. Her voice was filled with barely concealed joy. She assured me over the phone, "Mrs. Rockey, rest assured. Even if we have to empty New York today, I will make sure to get everything to you." So that day, before finishing work, all the assistants of the senior executives and the girls from the general office at Rockey's headquarters, 46 people in total, received a generous gift from the president's wife, a Hermes necklace worth $120,000. Although the price was not comparable to the $2 million auction necklace, it was fair in terms of quantity, spreading the equality. Alice, ever tactful, required each person to post a moment with the caption, "The president's wife says every girl deserves better." Clenching my fists, as ordered, my president's wife. Naturally, the girls were happy to comply. As assistants and in the general office, they were practically the gossip center of the entire company. Now that they received a gift from the president's wife, who wouldn't happily post and caption? Some even added to their captions, "The president's wife knows how to play." Although the influence of the director's assistants might be minor, their spreading power within departments was formidable. Within half an hour, the entire company knew that the president's wife had given everyone a Hermes necklace. As for the reason, the gossip circles were already buzzing. Serena, looking pale and seemingly deeply humiliated, with red-rimmed eyes, went to the bathroom to take off the diamond necklace. Two colleagues entering to touch up their makeup saw her and snickered meaningfully. Serena, unable to bear the shame, bowed her head and quickly left the bathroom, with the mocking laughter growing louder behind her. Her cheeks burning, she put the necklace back in the box, returning it to Rockey unopened. Rockey had just finished a video call with his partners. Seeing the visibly crying girl clutching the necklace box, staring dejectedly at her toes. "What's wrong?" Rockey asked with confusion. Before Serena could speak, tears started flowing. She choked softly, looking pitiful. "Rockey, please take this necklace back. I can't accept it." Rocky's usually stern face showed a hint of displeasure. His intuition told him that something had happened, but he did not directly question her. He just quietly watched the person before him. Serena bit her lip, hesitated for a moment, and finally spoke up, recounting everything that had happened in the office that day. "Rockey, I'm sorry for causing trouble. I just posted a moment to encourage myself. I didn't know it would be seen by the wife." Serena sobbed softly. "I didn't expect the wife to be so angry. She looked as pitiful as a little white rabbit." "Rockey, I want to apologize to the wife in person. I want to explain everything to her." Rockey had never been in the habit of checking moments. His time was filled with work, but as the president of the company, he was well aware of these office gossip habits, and his usually cold face grew even colder. "I understand," the man said solemnly. That night, Rockey brought Serena home. The girl stood timidly behind the man. "I called Serena here so she could clarify things face to face." Rockey sighed. "Haley, Serena is just my secretary. Because of what happened yesterday, to show my apology, I gave her a gift, that's all. I stirred my spoon and finished the bird's nest soup cooked by the nanny. Sorry, sister-in-law." Serena, with a sincere attitude, bowed to me, timid and fragile. "This is the first time I've received such an expensive gift." I lost my head for a moment. "If I did something to upset you, please tell me, and I'll fix it right away." I raised an eyebrow. "Serena, right?" The girl glanced at Rockey, seemingly seeking courage from him, and nodded slowly. Seeing the woman's brave but misguided attempt to confront me, I found it amusing. "I'm not your teacher or your boss. I don't have the time to teach you how to behave. But I am Rockey's wife, so if anyone dares to have ambiguous relations with my husband, I won't give them a chance to reform." The girl probably had never encountered someone as straightforward as me, and her already awkward face grew even more pitiful. "Haley, Serena came to apologize to you." Rockey understood my nature and methods. Even if he did not agree with my actions today, he understood my feelings. So he did not scold me but agreed to let Serena apologize. He had made a concession, hoping I would let go of the misunderstanding. We are all smart people. Even a glance can convey understanding. "I understand." I decided to give Rockey a chance. After all, he had not committed any infidelity. But there will be no next time, no matter who it is. "You didn't need to use such methods to deal with a girl." Before going to bed, Rockey brought up the topic. "You should have told me first." I was sitting at the vanity, fixing my hair, staring at the handsome man in the mirror. "You knew I loved that necklace, yet you gave it to another woman. Isn't it right for me to be upset?" I couldn't imagine whether I would still admire him as before if someone so perfect were tainted. Rockey calmly went to the bar to pour himself a glass of ice water. She cried all night because of your misunderstanding. In the morning, seeing her eyes so swollen, I gave her the necklace as a gesture of apology. There was no hint of a flaw. I stared at him coldly for a long while. 2 million is a small amount for us. Giving it away casually makes sense. It's just about whether the recipient is worth it. The man tapped his fingers on the marble countertop. He was waiting for me to think. This was the first time we had a conflict in our relationship because of a third party. Our upbringing and refinement made us both weary of such matters. We are both people who value decorum. Rocky, I love you. Rocky's fingertips faltered. He probably didn't expect me to say this suddenly. Rocky, I love the spotless you. This is what makes you different from others. You never allowed women to get close because you have a cleanliness obsession in relationships, and you wanted a pure marriage. I wasn't like this before, but your values have influenced me. Now, our life goals are aligned. I hope your marriage will never have crossroads. Rocky, resigned, I haven't. Rocky is a very clear-headed person. He knew that if I minded, he wouldn't give Serena any more chances to harbor illusions. Without the president's endorsement, Serena, as an intern, could only start with the most basic tasks. Previously, she had a chance to rotate through the front desk. Now, Alice didn't even schedule her. I hadn't instructed anyone to exclude her. Since Rocky had a sense of proportion, I completely trusted him. But such things didn't need my direction. There are always people who play the high and mighty. Within half a month, this new secretary couldn't handle the disparity and psychological pressure, losing weight noticeably. The turning point came after an important senior meeting. That day, Serena was alone, tasked with cleaning up the small conference room. The girl, in a skirt suit, was on her knees, struggling to remove chewing gum from the carpet with a razor blade. This scene was witnessed by Rocky, who had unexpectedly returned. Realizing someone was behind her, the girl hurriedly stood up, embarrassed. Rocky's gaze was deep and cold. Such a silent stare made Serena's self-esteem vanish. Rocky, tears involuntarily fell from the girl's eyes. She wasn't acting or pretending. Rocky had always been the unreachable son she admired, and now being marginalized, she was almost resigned to her fate. Seeing herself in this state being observed by the man, Serena wished she could push Rocky away and run out the door. In just half a month, the once cheerful and lively girl had become so fragile. This was the first time Rocky lost his temper. He returned home and smashed the water cup I handed him on the floor. The water splashed everywhere. Why can't you let her go? Haley, I respect and love you, but I've repeatedly tolerated your insults and harm towards her. Does bullying the weak give you pleasure? I remembered that during Rocky's studies abroad, his younger sister, in middle school, had committed suicide due to school bullying. This had become an indelible scar in his heart, leading him to despise such behavior deeply. Haley, don't make me see you hurting others with these methods again, or I won't stand by any longer. I stared in shock at the man before me, who had lost control of his emotions. For the first time after our marriage, Rocky had lost his composure and yelled at me over something I hadn't done. The feeling was distressing, like broken glass, like spilled water that can't be recovered. Rocky promoted Serena to personal assistant. At the same time, he decisively fired Alice, the assistant who had worked with him for 7 years. You need to understand who you are really working for. Alice was stubborn in some ways. I'm working for you, Rocky. There are some things I would handle privately with the wife, but only personal matters. The man threw the schedule in front of Alice. Really? Such righteous words? Does your professional ethics let you bully others? Alice fell silent, knowing she had been caught making things difficult for Serena, her face showing fear. Rocky saw through it all. Lack of tolerance, inability to distinguish right from wrong, mixing personal and professional matters to suppress colleagues. What right do you have to hold the position of chief assistant? Alice left the office dejectedly. Several assistants outside looked worried. Gia, are you really leaving? Tears still hadn't fallen, and Alice quickly wiped them away. Yes, I'm leaving. Sisters, see you around. I was in an unprecedented Cold War with Rocky. He stayed in a hotel. Serena came to pick up his clothes. If Rocky wanted to make things difficult, he would surpass me in doing so. The housekeeper had long received the call. She had already packed his daily necessities. Serena, perhaps frightened by my temper, took the suitcase packed by the housekeeper and left obediently. Before leaving, she carefully said, Madam, Rocky asked us to add each other as friends. If there's anything in the future, you can contact me. With Alice gone, Serena took over her job. There's nothing to contact about. Tell him to stay as far away as possible. Serena didn't understand why, even with Rockey staying in a hotel, I could still be so resolute. Her eyes showed confusion, but more so, delight. The housekeeper shook her head and kindly advised, "Madam, why don't you just soften up and apologize to Mr. Rockey? How did it come to such a quarrel between two people who usually don't argue?" Having worked for Rockey's family for over a decade, she had a long-term affection for them. He was also waiting for me to admit fault and apologize, wasn't he? Ridiculous. Why should I apologize? Rockey never came back again. However, Serena's moments were frequently updated, mostly about her activities with Rockey. Custom evening gowns from Chanel, private equity fund dinner invitations, summit forums with million-dollar fireworks, sailboat hotel night views, photos with the CEO of Sequoia Capital, and so on. Every post seemed to celebrate new experiences and meeting the right person in life, garnering likes over 100 each time. Some people even suggested in the comments that she should open a Douyin account to showcase the daily life of high society. Several mutual friends, puzzled, sent me screenshots of Serena's moments with question marks. If you want to know Rockey's whereabouts, you can guess pretty well from this secretary's moments. Everyone is perceptive. Previously, I was the one accompanying Rockey to events. When I was unavailable or unwilling to go, one of his assistants would take my place. Now, his regular companion had changed. I didn't have the energy to respond to my friends' well-intentioned reminders, merely sending a thank you emoji. At that time, I was privately working with my financial advisor on asset division. It was a massive and complex task. Due to the marriage alliance, the two groups held shares in each other. Additionally, there was the family fund I managed, with countless investments in properties, metals, stocks, ships, etc. Some overseas properties required me to review property certificates and addresses to recall them. Organizing these things took a considerable amount of time. That day, I received a call from Rockey, who had just returned from a business trip. "Mom wants us to come back for dinner." Okay. We acted as if nothing had happened, as usual. The driver picked up Rockey from the airport, then picked me up to go to my in-laws. Rockey and Serena sat in the back seat together, and they even left a seat for me in the front passenger side. Serena's gloating was evident. I found my situation amusing. This time, I didn't assert my position, but calmly accepted the passenger seat. Rockey's demeanor was cold, and the atmosphere was heavily oppressive. "Sister-in-law, we just returned from Manhattan today. Mother said she wanted to see Rockey, so I brought some gifts along to visit her." Serena, still as talkative as ever, seemed more mature and composed than before, likely having gained experience from being around Rockey. I said nothing and closed my eyes to rest. Serena's enthusiasm waned. Rockey's lips were pressed tightly together, and he remained silent throughout the drive. When Serena arrived, Rockey's mother seemed surprised to see her. The girl greeted her smoothly, introducing herself. She seemed quite adept at winning people over, quickly making Rockey's mother laugh heartily. At the dinner table, Serena chatted about some amusing work-related anecdotes involving Rockey, and Rockey's mother nodded in satisfaction. Then she inquired about Rockey's personal life, and Serena adeptly handled the conversation. The atmosphere at the table grew increasingly awkward. Serena's dimpled smile seemed out of place in the suddenly tense environment. Realizing she had said something inappropriate, Serena wasn't entirely foolish. Personal matters were my domain. Rockey's mother was not naive. Rockey remained silent. I elegantly dabbed my lips with a napkin. "Mom, I'm pregnant." Really, Haley? This was huge news. Rockey's mother's eyes lit up. When did this happen? The man, who had been cold and silent since I got into the car, now showed rare signs of emotion. I raised an eyebrow, delighting in the moment. "I just found out yesterday. The doctor said it's been 3 weeks." Rockey's mother was overjoyed, eager to call Rockey's father and chat about the news. She continued to fuss about accompanying me to the hospital the next day. Serena looked surprised, her innocent almond eyes widening. "Sister-in-law, are you sure you haven't mixed up the timing? Rockey and I have been on business trips abroad for the past 2 months." Rockey's mother was taken aback by this revelation. "There's no mistake. I specifically saw Professor Fong, a renowned obstetrician. It's definitely been 3 weeks." I emphasized that 3 weeks apart. Rockey knew very well that he had been away from home during this period. "This child isn't his." The warmth vanished from Rockey's face. "Haley." Rockey was on the verge of exploding, yet he tried to suppress his anger, seemingly waiting for an explanation. I couldn't help but savor my triumph. "Congratulations to me, Rockey. I'm going to be a mother." "Don't make such jokes," he responded coldly. I placed the pregnancy test report, which I had prepared in advance, on the table. "I'm afraid this isn't a joke." During the time you were away on your honeymoon with your mistress, I was lonely and ended up spending nights with a few former lovers. Now, I don't know who the father is. If you don't mind, I can have the child call you Dad, but they'll have my last name." With each word I spoke, Rocky's face grew colder. Enough. Only when I finished speaking did Rockey finally lose control. I ignored the man's fury. "Rockey, how does it feel to be cuckolded?" Rockey was taken aback. He couldn't have imagined that I would so blatantly cheat and then make a public announcement that I was pregnant with someone else's child. "I never cheated on you." The man's hands were clenched tightly, veins visible, clearly shaken by the revelation. "We were just working. We never crossed boundaries. I've never been unfaithful." I touched my belly, uninterested in his belated explanations. "Your secretary flaunts your workday with her on Moments every day. Rockey, haven't you seen it? Even our friends have noticed and warned me. Do you still think it's not crossing the line? If you can take her out to see stars and moons, then I can talk about poetry and philosophy with other men." Rockey was rarely this angry, but I didn't care. I even felt a bit regretful. "Too bad, Rockey. I didn't manage to bring another man back to your house. Compared to your provocation today, I'm still slightly inferior." Rockey couldn't accept it. He thought that he and Serena had been open and above board. Their interactions had been limited to work-related communication. He didn't understand why things had escalated like this. Before this, he had always believed that our marriage was stable and happy. "Sister-in-law, Rockey and I are innocent." Serena, eager to defend herself in front of Rocky's mother, began her justification. "I've only visited to facilitate work. I've communicated with Mrs. Rockey a few times over the phone. For work convenience, I came to visit. This is all work-related for me. You might not understand, but as the CEO's chief secretary, I have to handle everything meticulously. Rockey and I really haven't crossed any lines." Serena sat next to Rockey, her posture upright. "Really? On the way here, you sat next to Rockey and left the CEO's wife in the passenger seat. Did your meticulousness suddenly become irrelevant?" I ruthlessly exposed her. The woman was speechless, not knowing how to respond. I didn't spare Rockey either. "Rockey, is this the chief assistant you personally trained for 2 months? Alice was also a woman and your secretary. She's been with you since college. Did she ever sit beside you? Did I ever make any issues with her?" Rockey's breath quickened, his eyes reddening. "Let's get a divorce, Rockey." The man dragged me home, leaving Serena behind at the Rockey family estate. This was the first time he had returned home since our Cold War. I had already dealt with most of the household matters. Even the live-in maids had been dismissed. Rockey stopped, shocked and bewildered, at how the home we had shared for 3 years now felt unfamiliar. He finally realized that my divorce had been premeditated. With reddened eyes and disbelief, he held me tightly. "Haley, I didn't cheat." His voice was desolate and lingering. "Have the baby aborted, and we'll start over." As if hearing a joke, I responded scornfully. "That's my child. Why should I abort?" His calmness seemed to pierce Rocky's heart. "I didn't do anything. You know that." I broke free from his embrace. "Yes, I know. You're still very clean, but what's the use? You had Serena come to the house to pick up your suitcase. You knew I would be disgusted. You took her to every event. You knew I would be criticized. You knew everything, yet you still did it. You allowed her provocations to embarrass me and force me to seek reconciliation. You hate that I am strong, but Rockey, do you see that so-called weak person intentionally pushing my limits?" Tears streamed down my face as I recalled our past, unable to believe that our marriage was so fragile. "You knew she had feelings for you, right? I had warned you about that, Rockey. Willful ignorance is less dangerous than knowing and still proceeding." Rockey trembled, unsteady on his feet, his voice a mere whisper. "Sorry, Haley. She always reminds me of Rockey. I'm afraid you'll become one of those monsters." Rockey also had 2 sweet dimples. I just didn't want to see her cry. I never had any thoughts about her. Seeing Rocky's remorse, I felt no stir within. Maybe he was innocent, but I wasn't going to foolishly hand my vulnerabilities to anyone who might hurt me. Rockey did not agree to the divorce. He hired a new elite male assistant and even got drunk in the wine cellar. I struggled to help him onto the sofa. He was a quiet drunk, compliant. But as I prepared to leave, he pulled me into his arms, red-eyed and pleading. "Haley, let's not divorce. If you want the baby, have him." As for Serena, no big company would hire her after Rocky's deliberate distancing. She went from being the envy of many to being privately mocked by everyone. When Serena found me, her once youthful and vibrant appearance had faded, her weariness evident even through layers of makeup. "On the day I joined the company, I saw you. I brought you tea and stood by your side, waiting for further instructions. You never glanced at me while talking with Rockey about wedding gifts." The girl was mocking. "People like Rockey, if it weren't for work, I'd never have a chance to know him. And you? Just by marrying well, you're with him. That night at the auction, I told Rockey it was impolite for the CEO to sit in the back while employees were in the front. I'd switch back when I saw you. Rockey didn't comment. The girl seemed to recall her spirited self from that day. I ordered coffee and dessert for her as I dealt with the waiter. Her contemptuous look was met with my usual arrogance. You privileged second generation. What right do you have to look down on me? Serena's disdain for me was clear. You don't deserve Rockey's love. Is that so? Did you get it then? I calmly watched as she floundered. Wasn't it because I threatened you that you couldn't stand it and wanted a divorce? I stirred my coffee slowly. Because I cheated and got pregnant with another man's child. Didn't you know that already? Serena was choked by my words, her emotions fluctuating wildly. What's there to be proud of? With a bad temper, no job, and having an affair with another man's child, do you really think Rockey would want you? Slap. I gave her a merciless slap. Firstly, even though I'm older, I'm still 2 years younger than the Rockey you're obsessed with. Secondly, who do you think you are to call my child illegitimate? Lastly, I've wanted to slap you for a long time, you fool. By the time my belly was 4 months along, there was no turning back with Rockey's family. Under pressure from his parents, Rockey agreed to a peaceful divorce. The shareholding involving both families was extensive, and the strategic cooperation was mutually beneficial. Our parents thought there was no need to change it. The division of premarital assets was clear. Both sides had no objections. I had also meticulously organized our joint finances. Rockey signed the papers calmly, like a white crane that had fallen from grace, its wings broken and its once pristine feathers stained with blood. We divorced with dignity, bidding each other farewell. When the baby was born, he took my last name, Smith. Outsiders thought he was a premature baby, but his genes are indeed excellent. My mother kept asking who the father of the baby was. I did not tell her. The so-called one-night stand man was just a fabrication on my part, but they didn't need to know. Because he's a boy, my parents are no longer rushing me to go on dates. They plan to use their youth to groom him as the heir. As the little kid grows up, he increasingly resembles his father. Without the constraints of marriage, I've lived these years freely and fabulously. I've also dated several young and handsome boyfriends. Alice occasionally chats with me. From her, I've heard some gossip. Serena couldn't last even half a year and left on her own. In this circle, everyone is well informed. No major company dares to hire her. Rockey has become increasingly solitary over the past 2 years, focusing on his career. Every year-end shareholders meeting, my dad would have me return to the country to stand in for him. I know what my parents are thinking. It's amusing, and I can't be bothered to expose it. After the meetings, Rockey would drive me home. He would say it's on the way to celebrate the new year with my parents. Later, I gave birth to my child, Tony. Tony really likes Rockey. Someone secretly taught him that Rockey is his father. So he wiggled his little bottom and called Rockey daddy and asked for hugs. Rockey adores him and never refuses. As the child grows up, he obviously understands more. During the New Year period, I stay in the country to be with my family. Rockey cancels all his work to accompany us. He wants to ask if I would consider remarrying him. I declined. Marriage should be treated with caution. Otherwise, one suffers. Tony, on the other hand, visibly gets happier each time he sees Rockey. He insists on sitting between me and Rockey, calling me mommy on the left and daddy on the right, happily shouting. I tap him on the back of his head and tell him not to shout randomly. Rockey, with red-rimmed eyes, looks lost. He has countless apologies he wants to say to me, but I no longer need them. The end.